But the Ukrainian border town of Lviv, local officials said, had shot down 10 out of 13 Russian missiles on Tuesday.
We've been requesting to close our skies for a long time now, and we're talking to our international partners about this almost on a daily basis. We believe, and we're almost confident that, the air defense capabilities of Ukraine will continue to be a top priority, both for us and for our international partners.
Much more of that coming up. But right now, we can make a major projection in the battle for control of Congress, with huge, huge consequences here in Washington and indeed across the nation. CNN projects that Republicans will win control of the U.S. House of Representatives, reclaiming a majority for the first time in 4 years. This is a major blow to Democrats as Republicans gain new power to potentially limit President Biden's agenda and to make crucial decisions about House investigations. Let's go to Manu Raju up on Capitol Hill. This is a major development right now. The Republicans take the majority in the House, Manu.
Yeah, and with that, the power of the committees and the power to set the agenda, which is why this is hugely significant. Even though it is not as big of a majority as Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader, had wanted. They had hoped that they would be in the 230-seat range, maybe even 240-seat range. We don't know the final numbers here, but we do know that they have at least 218 seats. That is the majority to take back the House. They may have up to 220. We'll see ultimately how many they have, but significant, because once you have the majority in the U.S. House, you have the chairmanships and each of the key committees. That means you have subpoena power. You can set schedules for hearings. You can call cabinet secretaries to come testify. You can do what your party wants to do. On the floor of the House, the Speaker of the House Majority Leader get to set the exact schedule, what they're going to bring to the floor, what they refuse to bring to the floor, and decide the priorities, which is why winning back one chamber of Congress will have significant ramifications for the next 2 years of the Biden administration. Remember, Wolf, the Democrats had control of the House and the Senate in the first 2 years under Joe Biden. They had the narrowest of majorities, 50-50 in the Senate. They had a handful of seats in the Democratic-led House. They were still able to do a significant amount of legislation by passing bills, for some significant bills, along straight party lines, because they could do that under the budget process that allowed them to pass something like a nearly $2 trillion COVID relief bill. Also, that sweeping Inflation Reduction Act dealing with healthcare, climate change, taxes, and other issues. They will no longer be able to do that because in order to move through the budget process, you need to have support within, essentially, among your party, and Republicans and Democrats would not agree to move such sweeping legislation like that. So what does this mean for the next 2 years, Wolf? It means that any legislation that will pass almost certainly will be incremental. It will have to require a significant amount of consensus on both sides of the aisle. It would still need to surpass a 60-vote threshold in the Senate. Even as the Democrats are going to regain control of the Senate, they may have 51 seats, but they will still need 60 to pass anything. So what can actually get done in the next few years is an open question, but they will have major things to deal with next year, including raising the national debt ceiling to avoid a debt default next year, funding the government, always a tricky issue, something that could lead to a shutdown if there is not an agreement between the two sides. But at the moment, the big pressure point for the administration will be those investigations into the Biden family, the border, the origins of the coronavirus, among a whole wide range of other issues, as a new dynamic here is now in Washington, Wolf.
Manu, I want you to stand by. Jeremy Diamond is over at the White House for us, watching all of this unfold as well. Major development right now. CNN projecting that the Republicans will win the majority in the House of Representatives. Jeremy, I assume officials over where you are at the White House were bracing for this.
No doubt about it, Wolf. This is a major inflection point in Joe Biden's presidency. For his first 2 years in office, he has enjoyed control of from a Democratic perspective, of both the House and the Senate. And for the first time in his presidency, Joe Biden is now staring down the barrel of divided government, of power sharing with Republicans in a way that he has not yet had to experience as president of the United States. And this is going to be a real test of one of the major things that he ran on during his 2020 campaign, which is this idea that he can perhaps be a bridge between the two parties. Right now, that appears to be the last thing that's going to happen. We know that Republicans are sharpening their investigative and oversight powers, that they are preparing to wield that subpoena power against the Biden administration. on a number of fronts, investigations into everything from the withdrawal of Afghanistan to the Department of Homeland Security's handling of border security. Impeachment threats have been made both at the Secretary of Homeland Security as well as at the president himself. But to be clear, this is a White House that has been preparing for all of that for months now. And they are also looking at the fact that this is a House Republican majority that is going to be the narrowest majority in the House in decades. And so while they will still have to face the subpoena power of this House Republican majority, as slim as it may be, that does not change. There is a certain sentiment here at the White House, I can tell you in speaking with officials, Wolf, that they are giddy at the prospect of Kevin McCarthy having to wrangle this very narrow and oftentimes very rowdy Republican caucus to getting things done. But a number of challenges beyond the investigations that this White House now faces in terms of funding the government, addressing issues like the debt ceiling, for example. These are all things that President Biden was warning about on the midterm campaign trail over the last several months, and now it is a reality that he will have to confront. Lastly, Wolf, I would just add, President Biden, as much as he has experience with a number of Republicans on Capitol Hill, Kevin McCarthy is not one of them. And he is, of course, the most likely person to become the next Speaker of the House. And he's someone who President Biden, while they spoke last week, they really have not had many dealings, Wolf, but you can be sure that they will have to speak much more going forward.
They certainly will. All right, Jeremy Diamond at the White House, thank you very much.